Maestro's weak arms struggled to support his weight. "Gosh," he said in embarrassment. "A few less cream cakes at the next bakery, I think." "How about none at all?" stated Dieter. "No, a few less," corrected Maestro quickly. He was nearly at the top and started thinking about cakes. He could really murder a cake right now. No, he thought. That would only be more weight on this rope. It was a great effort as it was. Perhaps half a cake, he decided. Yes, half a cake. He started envisioning a nice half-cream cake that just so happened to be double the size of standard cakes. Perfect, he thought. Within moments, though, even this comforting vision stopped helping him as he saw his make-believe cake oozing with blood instead of jam. Yes, he thought, perhaps murderer cake was not the best term to put there in this stressful situation they were heading into. He pushed these mad thoughts out of his head and kept climbing as fast as he could. Once he had reached the top and been pulled through the opening by Tobias, he looked down to see Rysandria was right below him. He had been delaying her climb. Rysandria made it with Tordrad pulling her up the last few feet, one muscled sinewy arm extending down out of the window to bring her into the room with ease. At last it was Dieter's turn. He had written a note to the City Watch with regards to the location of Leibnitz and the present situation they now embarked on, placing it on the dog's collar. With but a tap on its head, the dog bounded through the shadows to deliver the message. Dieter scaled the rope. The others noticed that he was a lot more nimble than his limping gait and weighted reassurance upon his walking staves suggested. As Dieter reached the window, he realized why they had not heard a drop from the other side. The window was actually an escape route designed in case of a siege. A small and still rolled-up rope ladder sat below the window just inches off the floor between the inner and outer wall. Glaring at the halfling, Dieter struck him about the head with the back of his hand. "There was a ladder! Why did you make us climb a flimsy rope?" The halfling had no answer, and so carried on down the overly narrow corridor they had found themselves in, without retaliation either, which Rysandria considered odd. The corridor was wide enough for only single file, and the group almost tripped over each other trying to decide which order to walk in. Tobias indicated for the group to follow him. Rysandria cast a nervous look back to Dieter, who just waved her forward impatiently. It worried her how his mood could change almost as suddenly as a lightning strike. Before long, they came to the end of the narrow, barely lit corridor, and to what appeared to be a dead end. Placing his ear to the door, the halfling heard nobody on the other side, and pushed down on a lever that the others hadn't spotted. It was coloured the same tone as the wall itself. This secret door slid open to reveal another winding corridor on a slight decline. They could all hear the chanting now, but only Maestro could understand it. It was Dark Tongue, the language of chaos. "Maestro, do you understand the words, what he is chanting about?" asked Dieter in a hushed tone. The group huddled together, expectantly, awaiting the wizard's reply.
"Oh, you know, the usual, oh mighty corn speech, accept these offerings, that kind of thing. At least that is the gist. I cannot make out the rest, sorry."
The group nodded in understanding and drew their weapons before progressing slowly down the corridor. Even though Tordrad couldn't understand the words being spoken, he understood that Chaos worshippers were here. He understood that he could be forced to kill all of them. The idea of this appealed to him somehow. As they got near the end of the corridor, Dieter stepped to the fore, blocking Tordrad and Tobias. Before they could question why he had done so, a shadow appeared around the corner, approaching cautiously, and Dieter shoved his surgical blade into the exposed abdomen of the Brother of the Axe, a maniacal devotee of the Dark Lord Khorne, evidently serving as a guard here. Before a drop of blood could spill, Dieter, using the leverage and angle of the blade, pulled the man, still skewered, out of the hallway, keeping his body against the wall to offset his weight. Another shadow appeared, this time cautiously as his comrade had made a strange sound around the corner. The guard then saw a splash of blood on the nearby wall and began to reach for his large axe. Dieter stepped in front of the red-clad armoured man and casually slit his throat from ear to ear, sidestepped to avoid the arterial spray as he said, "We are clear for now." The group gasped at the sight before them. They had all been in many battles alongside Dieter. Until now, however, they had not seen his medical expertise come to play in such a violent manner. "What?" he asked defensively. "We came here to do a job. Sometimes that means saving lives, sometimes it means taking them. I doubt there's anything else between us and the exit." Dieter, in fact, knew there were 3 more soldiers to come before they could reach the secret door that led out of the area. He also realized just how close he had come to letting rage take over. His blood was boiling hotter than was usual for him. As they began to move again, Tordrad saw the 3 guards on their side of the entrance which led to the heart of this place. Drawing his scimitar, the Kislevite charged into battle without a word, whilst Tobias loaded his crossbow and muttered, "Well, you can't always be right, Doctor." Dieter sneered and drew a throwing dagger he had taken from the Skaven lair, pitching it at the guard on the right. The dagger flew through the air and sunk into the wood of the wall behind the guard. This distracted the man long enough, though, for Tordrad to smash his shield into his face. There was a satisfying crack as the nose broke and knocked the guard out. Dieter rushed forward on his cane, machete in hand, ducking to avoid the bolt that sank into the knee of the guard in the centre. "Aim a little higher next time, and perhaps you'll succeed in actually hitting me," shouted Dieter back at the halfling. Maestro saw the 3rd guardsman pull out a throwing axe and said aloud, "I don't think I want you doing that." The wizard had channeled the winds of magic around him very quickly indeed, as he focused on the axe handle and uttered the incantations necessary to wrap the weapon itself in magic, outweighing it in the man's hands. As the man attempted to throw it, it fell in a downward arc, digging into his femoral artery. Grinning at this, Dieter kicked the handle of the axe, pushing it deep enough to almost sever the limb before swiping his machete to the left where the halfling's target had only been moments prior, only to find the man cut to ribbons. The halfling was stood above him, a grin on his face as he cockily stated, "What took you so long? That thing slows you down," gesturing to the cane. Before Dieter could allow the spiteful thought to be born, the 2 of them looked over at Tordrad, distracted by a loud slurping sound, as he was leaning back against the wall, drinking from his flask. Dieter looked at Tobias and smiled. The halfling almost thought he looked as if he was being nice. That couldn't be right, he thought. Dieter confirmed it and said, "Well, midget freak, at least I didn't get cut." Dieter pointed at Tobias's elbow, which was bleeding. He hadn't even realized. So sharp must the blade have been. He then considered if perhaps Dieter had done this to him while they were looking at Tordrad. No, surely not, he decided. Surely not. The sound of fanatical chanting was loud now. At this time, elsewhere in the temple, staff members were in the foyer, now amassed at the great locked doors that led into the main hall. Worried attempts were being made to get the doors open. They would not budge, though. Meanwhile, the group saw a small door ahead of them. It had no handle, and only the slightest indication of being an opening from the slight indentation into the wall. Dieter pushed on the door that led out of this passage, where the group stood open-mouthed, staring in shock at the scene before them. A section of wall within the great hall had opened inwards, straight into an adorning thick cloth, with religious symbols on it that hung on the wall. Suddenly the shape of Dieter could be seen through the cloth, followed by a blade that plunged out of the holy writings near the lower side, which tore across and made a hole through which the group stepped out from. Leibniz was standing in the centre of a group of 5 kneeling brothers of the axe, a dagger in his right hand, and the brass skull, the evil item that had been the root of all of this mess around his neck. They had been used all along. Used to recover the skull. Rysandria felt sick through to her stomach at this. Leibniz was speaking in dark tongue, and raised the dagger high above his head. bringing it down straight into the heart of the man in front of him who willingly allowed his life to be taken. Rysandria brought a hand to her mouth, and her eyes went wide. Tordrad clenched his fists and began to shake slightly with rage. Tobias took a step backwards in shock. As Leibniz did the act, a look of disgust on his face, Dieter frowned and thought about how it was such a sloppy performance, that he could have done a better job of it.